Hi, good afternoon, everybody. And to anyone watching this back, good day, good morning. I'm very excited today to be here with Marie. Marie and I first met probably about 6 months ago when I saw what she was up to with Speak Out Revolution and thought, oh, this looks interesting. There's something here which is very aligned to what's important to me and the changes that I'm trying to make in the world. So I thought we would connect and have a chat. And since then, we've been trying to find time to do this. Marie's very busy, I'm very busy, so it's taken us a while. And I think it was worth the wait. I'm actually going to let Marie introduce herself and tell us a little bit about what she does and who she is. Thanks for joining us, Marie.
No, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I feel like the pressure is on now that you said it was worth the wait. I'm hoping that I can perform for you today. Hello, everyone that's watching and people watching on playback. My name is Marie Hemmingway. I'm one of the founders of Speak Out Revolution. We're an award-winning nonprofit on a mission to cancel the culture of silence on workplace harassment and bullying. And we're trying to take a unique data-driven approach where we connect people who have had lived experience with workplace harassment and bullying, allow them to safely speak out and document their experience from anywhere in the world, and then collate that information into an open source business intelligence tool or dashboard so that anybody can access the insights to effectively drive change either within their own sphere of influence or within their organizations.
I wonder, as you say that, what was your drive? What was the thing that actually made you come up with this idea and go off and create it?
It's quite a boring story that I think you'll probably hear from many people involved in this type of work. So Frances Holmes, who's my co-founder, and myself have worked in STEM fields for, I don't want to say more than a decade because it makes me feel old. So heavily male-dominated fields. And we were consistently seeing that women were changing roles, leaving the sector, leaving the profession as a whole. And the official reasons that women were given were always socially acceptable reasons. But actually, when you had deeper conversations to try and understand the drivers behind that, it always came down to something related to non-inclusive treatment at work, unfair treatment, harassment, bullying. And I think as this happened, Fran and I both independently in our careers became more involved in ED&I work. And ultimately it came to a head because multiple connections that were close to both of us were experiencing very similar challenges in their organization. They were doing all of the things that you're told to do: report it to HR, document it, all of the standard advice that you get, and the outcomes that they were achieving were very poor. And we ultimately decided that there was this common trend that we were seeing amongst our connections in which people were being targets of workplace harassment and bullying were being silenced. The problem wasn't being solved. And we tried to understand how we could help. And, Fran's a mathematician, I'm a physicist. We both have a background in tech. Fran's background's in innovation. And we started to look at, could we help expose what the challenges looked like at a more strategic level so that the organizations that really care about this problem that aren't going to see it can take proactive action. And that essentially was the birth of the idea of Speak Out Revolution. And we were very fortunate to get support from PA Consulting. Shout out to our tech partners who helped us bring the vision to made it into a technical product and made it a reality. And we're just continuing to gather insights and create resources to share those insights with as many people as possible.
Okay, so you've seen a need within the industry and you're trying to create this kind of transparency as to a cause and effect, effectively, is like moving the needle from the kind of the grey murky area in the corner to actually, when you look at the data, when you look at the fact, this is the overall kind of picture of what's going on in your specific business, or just in the industry as a whole?
So the Speak Out dashboard itself presents insights at the level, and you can interrogate the information by protected characteristics. So you could ask questions like, for my sector, what are the experiences of women? What are the experiences of Black women specifically? How does that vary from everybody's experience of workplace harassment and bullying? So you can draw comparative insights. We do capture information at the organizational level. We do not publish that openly. And this was a decision that we took a while ago. There's two real reasons. One is our legal people said that we probably quite quickly get sued. And the second reason was we got to the point of realizing that if we really wanted to drive impact, we had to be the bridge between people who had had terrible experiences and the organizations that are enabling that to flourish. And so we don't want to call people out, we want to call them in, or we don't want to call organizations out, we want to call them in. And we need to build trust to be able to do that.
Yeah, totally. So you want to be part of the solution. You're connecting those who are interested with the real insights to enable them to create a solution to what is being seen or what's being felt, I guess, more within their workplace.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Okay. So, you talk about this quite openly, quite courageously. What does it actually take to speak out about this so openly?
I get, to be honest, I mean, I can only talk about this as an observer in the, I work very closely with people who have experienced workplace harassment and bullying. We intentionally designed our team to be a mix of people who had and hadn't, so that we could, bring those insights into everyday decision making within Speak Out Revolution. So I can only speak as an observer, and I guess it's my biggest learning from the work so far is, for someone who is impacted by workplace harassment and bullying, which is far more subtle, far more low level over a long period of time than we would really think, more like psychological. It's kind of like psychological warfare. I see it. You don't know it's happening. For those people that are impacted, the impact to their mental health is so profound. And trying to navigate the many barriers that exist to, one, speaking out, and then two, advocating for an outcome that is beneficial to that individual is overwhelming. And I often say, I don't know if people who speak out about workplace harassment and bullying are, really brave or really stupid, because the outcomes are really clear. The system, or the processes and systems that exist that are aligned with best practice in the UK work against the individual, and that's what we're hoping to shift. We want to shine a light on it. We want to partner with organizations that are changing legislation, and we want organizations to stop talking about being inclusive and start acting in a way that is inclusive for their employees.
Yeah, completely. Actually creating that systemic change in within the industry, like you say, and within the structures that actually are supposed to support. I mean, let's talk about in the broader senses, like the rape cases. Supporting the individuals who have been in those situations and enabling them to find closure of it. So that kind of what came to me as you were talking was, actually there's this kind of like, it's not just in the businesses, is it? It's also in the setup and the way it's dealt with.
Absolutely.
Okay. What is it that has challenged you most in going on this journey to build this NGO?
Big questions. Oh, what has challenged me most? It's such. I would say when I think probably it's the realization that is decades away, and that actually when I first set out on the journey of Speak Out Revolution, the hypothesis that I had was the reason that organizations are handling complaints of workplace harassment very operationally, very he said, she said, is because they don't know better. They don't have the strategic insight. They can't see that at the organizational level there are clear trends. So if we can expose them in a way that is friendly, they can take action. And I think, and it was naive, I would say, because what I think I've come to learn is the reality is organizations know they have problems. And I think if you look at the background and research, much of this is driven by a failing of leadership. So the people that are there to invest in the solution are the people that are essentially creating the systems that enable these problems to flourish. And I think the biggest challenge that I've had to face is recognizing that organizations know they have these problems and they don't want to change. They'd rather just keep handing out non-disclosure agreements to women that get pregnant and spending 20 grand silencing them than taking a look in the mirror and saying, I'm contributing to this problem that is very damaging both for my organization and society as a whole. So I think that's my biggest challenge, coming to realize that that is the actual reality of the scenario.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bold. It's obviously it's a very in your face to kind of take that on and think. Actually, what I thought my thinking was that everyone had good intentions around this, and if we could make it visible, then it would change. And actually, it's almost like it's more systemic than that, the problem, because of the way organizations have been built up. And I often see this with some of the things that I'm dealing with. I'm fairly aligned with you in the fact that I do think generally people have got a positive intention. However, I think they miss the way to actually create the change. They don't see the power they have to change some of the things that are actually happening. And it's a very difficult position, because we do need to go in compassionately to try and open the eyes and try and create change. And I can also hear this frustration that actually I believe it's clear enough, and yet change isn't happening. So there must be something else there which is actually preventing this change from occurring. And it's, I guess, the same with all of these big problems we've got in the world. Is it's going to take some very uncomfortable conversations and some very brave conversations. And like you say, very brave leaders to get uncomfortable and say, actually, maybe our systems are part of the problem. And if it was my wife, if it was my daughter, if it was, my son even, who was going through this, then how would that impact them? And I quite often find we kind of have to take it back into the personal to help people really understand the emotional impact, I think, that this stuff has.
I think I will try and use this in future. It's almost what does this look like in your world, and how would you feel? And you're in a position of influence. So what action can you take within your sphere to drive positive change? For sure.
And also, I kind of almost go one step further. It's like whenever we're trying to challenge what's not working, what would be the value to your business if we could turn this around? How would what would be the opportunity that you can't take hold of today? Because there is a massive opportunity, isn't there, to actually deal with this and be the people who are leading the way, not just in checkbox exercises with DEI type stuff, but actually grounding like you say, a revolution.
I completely agree, and there are business cases out there for the impacts of workplace harassment and bullying within our workplaces on productivity and revenue for organizations. These exist. The numbers are compelling. If you are considering that a CBA yes, it makes sense to spend, a couple, 50 grand on training your workforce because you potentially save so much. I think in my experience, what I've observed is, organizations tend to think about this more from the problem angle or problem perspective. And they think they link workplace harassment and bullying to the legal side of things. So when they're thinking about it, they're not thinking about the opportunity or the value that they unlock from employees or retaining diversity of thought and driving innovation in their organizations. What they're really thinking about from what I've seen and heard is, is this going to go in a newspaper? Am I going to see reputational impact? Is that going to hit our share price? Can we shut that person up with an NDA? Because that is I don't see that on my quarterly statement. It's such a small amount. And actually, it solves my problem in the near term. And I really care about the near term. 10 years from now, it'll be someone else's problem. So, I mean, that's sounds very cynical. But that's really the narrative or the context within which I'm hearing and having conversations.
Do you know what you've just said? And we're kind of getting off point, I guess, but actually I think it's an important point. Is it takes me back to kind of the Brené Brown work on shame. When we get to a point where we feel ashamed and there's a direct impact on us, that it's almost like it closes down. And it's like at a business level, this also seems to be happening, is goes into a protection kind of mode. And this is how we work as humans as well. When we feel ashamed about something, we try and block it out, we try and move it away because it feels uncomfortable. And yet power to actually sit with it and unpick it and actually make your business stronger, or make yourself stronger when you're talking about, as an individual. It's really there. And yet it is a massive hurdle to go over, to actually be brave enough and be courageous enough to almost shine the light onto what's happening within your business, to understand it in a way that actually opens doors, creates opportunities. Because, I mean, like you say, it's a bit like women in tech. The stats are all there. Having more women in leadership or more diversity in leadership was great for business. And yet we're not seeing the needle shifting. And it's, there are so many of these type of examples where logically all the stats are now available and things still aren't changing quickly enough because of some of the underlying systems that are happening or still in place within these large businesses.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what are you most proud of achieving? Let's talk your whole career, but obviously I'm guessing there's something going to come out maybe of what you've been doing recently. But what is it that kind of you look back and go, you know what, actually, maybe I didn't appreciate it at the time, but I'm damn proud of myself?
Oh, gosh. I will just say I did read these questions that you sent quite a while ago, and I remember thinking through them and thinking, okay, yeah, I've got something for that. And so
You're
today
not
I was
supposed to prepare for this. People want to hear what comes to your brain.
Well, I was thinking I won't do any prep. I thought, and then what am I most proud of with respect to my career?
Yeah, with what you've achieved.
So this might be a weird answer. So I remember when so Speak Out Revolution, it's a non-profit, it's volunteer led. Francis and I and our team all work without remuneration. I was in a very nicely paid job before I quit it to work without pay for in excess of a year to get Speak Out set up and develop our tech, build our team. And I think when I look back on my career, my proudest moment is essentially being brave enough to say, I want to go and do something that is wildly different because I think somebody needs to do it. And I don't know if it was privilege or maybe I just didn't have time to spend any of my money, but being in a position to do that and take the leap, essentially. And I think builds future resilience, I think, because now I feel like, wow, I did that then. What am I going to do next? I don't know. So I probably think that, rather than I delivered this project and somebody said they thought it was good, or, I did this thing.
I love that. It's actually almost like this vulnerability is when we feel vulnerable, it's like courage in disguise. When we're feeling that real discomfort of like, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to walk away. Other people also see it as courage. They don't see the discomfort that we're going through when you take a decision like that. And then always looking back, it's like, wow, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, I kind of think, gosh, I must have been mad. Why would I do that? That makes no sense whatsoever. But actually, actually, my biggest fear when I left consulting to set up Speak Out and work for free was, I'm never going to be able to get employed again. Nobody is going to want to employ someone who specifically looks workplace harassment and bullying, that talks about that. And actually, it had the exact opposite effect. Made me more employable. So it worked out well in the end, I think.
Yeah, and this is something that feels counterintuitive, isn't it? It's taking a stand for something, speaking up, and using your voice, being passionate about something actually attracts people to you, attracts kind of things to you that are more aligned potentially to actually what you want to do. And it does feel counterintuitive because, as you say, it can feel very uncomfortable. You think, oh, I'm putting myself out there. And yet I see it when, for example, someone resigns. And then in that time period from when they resign until they leave, the amount of change they can create, because they're all of a sudden, less restricted, or feel less restricted because they've already resigned.
And I'll bear that in mind for when I need to get a project over the line. I'll just resign and then rapidly deliver.
Oh dear. Right, a couple more questions for you, and then I've got one in the chat as well. But maybe who or what has supported you most during your career, during kind of this process of starting Speak Out Revolution and developing?
Without a doubt, I don't even have to think for more than a second. My partner, and it's hard to describe the many ways in. He is essentially the infrastructure that enables me to do the various random mad things that I would like to do in life, in a way that would make sense. So, I quit to set up Speak Out. He then quit his job and helped develop. He's a machine learning engineer. Helped develop the back end to our product. So set that up for us. He was the one that encouraged me to do it and helped me understand the risks. He's the one that looks after my child when I have to take calls on a Friday evening with, say, the US when we're talking to partners. So, and actually, I almost say to people now, when people say, like, what advice would you give to your younger self? Or like a younger version of you? I think my advice, especially for women, would always be make sure that you choose a life partner that absolutely supports what you want to do. Because as soon as you have children, having children and working is, I personally think, is somewhat impossible. And I don't understand how I get through every week. But if you don't have a partner that actively supports what it is that you want to do in life, I think it's a game changer.
I couldn't agree with you more. And like designing the partnership so that it supports both of you is what I hear that you've achieved. So
well, if you spoke to my partner, I don't know whether he would agree with that statement, but
I don't know whether my husband would agree either, but trying to do things slightly differently. Okay, so you've talked about this advice that you would give, but what are the things that still sometimes scare you? What's something that maybe you wake up in the middle of the night and you worry about?
That is a hard question. Well, actually, it's quite an easy question now I think about it. It tends to translate into my nightmares. So I think, when I was younger and at university, I used to have nightmares about my quantum physics exam. And then as I got slightly older and went into the workplace, I used to have nightmares about public speaking. Now I have nightmares about not having sufficient childcare such that I can go to work to do my job. So, and it sounds so trivial, but the stress and added burden and figuring out what happens when your child is sick or your childcare provider is not available is so damaging when you have two people that work, and stressful. It's the thing that I worry about, I would say, the most out of all things.
Interesting, isn't it? Because my husband and I always say, when everybody's well, everything's fine. But it's like only one thing needs to fall over, and then it's kind of
Yes.
like you get chaotic quite quickly, and you're like
Yes.
trying to pull things apart. But again, you're touching on another kind of systemic issue about how we deal with childcare. And that was all set up around one person staying at home and one person going to work. And the systems have never really kind of adjusted. And
No.
yeah, it's I think a problem that many people can relate to. So thanks for sharing that. Now I'm going to ask you Tracy's question, which came in to finish us off, which says, which training do you think is most effective for instilling impactful change in businesses against bullying?
So I think this is a great question, based on, I mean, if an organization came to me, and they do it a lot actually, and say like, we don't have a problem with workplace harassment and bullying, but we'd love to do something to really make sure that we make sure that that doesn't happen, when clearly they've got a systemic problem and people are reporting to them. I always say, you can survey your organization, you can understand what the key challenges are. If you're only going to do one thing, or if you've only got 10 grand or whatever it might be, invest in active bystander intervention, which is, it's not, they need to rebrand, I think, but this is essentially grassroots disruption, empowering employees across your organization to, at the grassroots, disrupt non-inclusive behaviors in the workplace such that you don't get the slippery slope of culture change. So it's the sex, the sexist comment that's meant as a joke, making sure that the person who is stood next to it watching it happen, which based on our data, there are witnesses or people experience workplace harassment and bullying with witnesses present around 60% of the time, and it's always face-to-face in workplaces. That's the majority instance. Making sure that those people, when they see it happen, understand it's problematic, know what action to take to positively intervene, and increase the likelihood of them saying, I'm sorry, what did you say? I don't think that's appropriate. Or, do you think that that is the right thing to say in the workplace? Or any other measure of intervention associated with active bystander training. So, in summary, one thing without even understanding the problem, active bystander intervention, studies have shown, is the most effective way to drive change at the grassroots level.
Yeah, I remember seeing I think it was a City of London advert with a group of men kind of talking to a woman in the dark outside a bus stop, and one of them sort of starting to harass her. And then you watch the guy having a conversation with himself in the mirror, one of the bystanders, saying, have a word, mate, intervene, don't let this go. You can see she's getting upset. And it's a really powerful advert, actually. And eventually he does intervene and have this conversation, like, leave her alone. You can see she's uncomfortable. But this kind of thing in the workplace and actually giving people the words to do this, I think is really powerful as well. I think, honestly, one of the problems we have in workplaces is almost people being too nice. And we need to enable people to have courageous conversations, say things as they see them, use their instinct to be able to react in a way that is actually, like you say, creates that intervention and just makes people think. Because if we can create an action at the point when it happens, than that person thinks next time. And I mean, I had it when I was, we were struggling to have children. I was going through multiple miscarriage. And I remember the amount of people that came up to me saying, well, now you're married, don't you think you need to be focusing on having a family rather than advancing your career? And there's me trying to keep a smile on my face at the same time thinking, how dare you've got no idea what's happening, within me. And the fact, obviously, that I was going through something actually just added shame onto this. When you're that person, you cannot, or it's very, very hard to stand up for yourself, because it just confirms everything you've been saying to yourself in your head almost. So it's you need that third party to really step in.
And it's exactly why I think we wanted to brand ourselves Speak Out Revolution. When you speak with targets of workplace harassment and bullying, it is so difficult for them to advocate for themselves in those scenarios, because it isn't just the one comment that they're having that maybe seems trivial to a passerby. It's 100 other comments and context that's built up over months, and exclusion from meetings and rumors that have been spread about them. And so to have a bystander be able to just even slightly disrupt it, especially because there's multiple people there, it doesn't even just say to the person that makes the comment that they don't think that behavior is appropriate. It says the same thing to everyone in the room. And so more people are inspired to step in and say, yeah, actually, no, I don't agree. And so it signals to the entire room and to the individual that's been impacted, this is what I expect, like as a bystander, as someone that is, party to these discussions, this is the level of behavior I expect in my environment. So beware, because if you do this again, I'm going to say it again. And there's less risk for them, technically, because they're not being harassed and bullied.
No, definitely. And the one way I always try and help people in these situations where they want to speak up or speak out in your words, is actually ground it in the company values. How is this honoring or dishonoring, and which of them? Because as soon as you use the values, which are things that most people know and can relate to very quickly, it gives you the words to just come out with it. Whereas otherwise you're searching for the right words, and sometimes you're more worried about getting the words wrong, by which time you've missed the opportunity to actually bring it up. And so I often find, like, when people use the values, they can more quickly attach and find a way in than they potentially can otherwise.
Yes, no, absolutely.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I find it insightful, all the things that you're doing, and I think it's very brave to go after this, but at the same time, like, if you don't, who is going to do it? And that's always the way I look at this stuff, is we have to raise our voices and do things that are important to us. So this is obviously important to you, and you've obviously experienced enough to make you realize something just doesn't quite work here, or irrelevant of what everyone's saying, what's actually happening is different. And this is the kind of stuff where obviously data really helps us to just hold up the mirror.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will continue to do that. And I guess I would just add, if there is anyone that has experienced workplace harassment and bullying, please do complete the Speak Out survey. You'll find it on our website at speakoutrevolution.co.uk. And for anyone that is interested in creating interventions for their organization, and they want sector-specific insights, please do take a look at the Speak Out dashboard. Freely available, open source information from people around the world.
Yeah, great. And maybe we can get your links in the comments of all the feeds, and then everyone can easily go and click on it.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time today, Marie, and thank you all for joining us. If there are other topics that you find that you want to have a conversation on, please send myself a note or send Marie a note if you connect with her story. We need to bring more of these topics out of the corner, and that's the aim of this. We're doing it perfectly, imperfectly, because we're all humans. But I do think there's a lot more that needs to be discussed than you generally are seeing on the everyday feeds on all the social media. So let's create the environment where we can have these courageous conversations. So thank you, Marie, for doing what you're doing. And
thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Take care.
Thanks for coming, everyone.